Today we're going to talk about the most carcinogenic food on the planet that you can possibly eat. And this is like a no joke. I am diving into a very current study that I found. I'm breaking it apart so you can understand this. So if you know anybody who has cancer or you're worried about getting cancer, this is the food you're going to want to avoid. Okay? Deal? Ready? Here we go. So there is a 2022 journal article done. It's on the journal is called Cancer. So it is a very reputable journal that prints lots of science that about what causes cancer. And they came out with an article that stated this. This was the conclusion. They concluded there is a strong link between excess sugar consumption and cancer, especially later in life. So when we look at food in general, we are now living in the most toxic time in human history. We have so many chemicals that are pouring into our food, that are allowed in our food, that we're eating, that are cancer causing. But of everything that we're talking about, sugar is the worst. And that's not just my opinion. That is the current research coming out of this cancer journal. And let me explain to you what sugar does that causes you to contributes to a cancer diagnosis. So here we go. There are three things. Here's the first one. The first one, and this one's so good, is that sugar increases your cancer risk independent of weight gain. So whether you know it or not, we do know that like sugar increases your chances of obesity. But just because you're skinny doesn't mean that you are not setting yourself up for diseases like cancer. In fact, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a major problem here, especially in America, because of toxic oils and a high sugar diet. The Western standard diet is the cancer chronic disease causing diet, because in that diet you have high amounts of sugar, you have all the wrong fats, and you have really intense refined carbohydrates that are coming to the under the name of like flour, like refined flour. And when you put those three things together, you create this environment where cancer can thrive. But one of the things that I found so interesting about this first point, that sugar increases cancer independently of weight gain, is I've heard more stories recently about people who have been skinny their whole life, and all of a sudden they get like a pre-diabetes diagnosis or they get a cancer diagnosis, and it like sideswipes them. So this is really interesting, and I want to think about this through many lenses. Those of you who have been struggling with weight for your whole life, there's a little bit of a gift in that if you've been trying to eat in a healthy way to lose weight. It's like that visible weight gain actually made you look in the mirror and go, I need to change my food. But the problem we have with people that are very thin, and it's what I call skinny fat, meaning they look skinny on the outside, but there's fat accumulating on the inside, is they can't look in the mirror and have a visible evidence that they are gaining weight and that there's something wrong on the inside. But according to this study, what it showed was that excess sugar consumption can lead to the development of cancer and the progression of diseases for those with cancer, independent of the association between sugar and obesity. So what that really means is sugar itself is a contributor to cancer, not obesity. Now, it does cause obesity, but sugar itself, by itself, will accelerate your chances of cancer. Now, I want to explain one more thing on this before I go into the second point. When we're looking at cells in your body, the cell is going to operate off of either, if you're in a fasted state, there is going to be this trigger inside the cell that triggers something like autophagy, where the cell cleans itself up and becomes a more efficient cell. Or if there's sugar swimming inside of that cell, a lot of dysfunction and disease can form inside that cell. So what ends up happening is that the mitochondria within the cell start malfunctioning, and those be when there's a lot of sugar inside the cell. And those mitochondria are what help detox the cell. If your mitochondria get dysfunction for too long, what happens is they can start to go rogue, and they can take over control of that cell, and they can start to turn that cell into a cancer cell. And this is the problem with cancer, is that the cell's intelligence has been hijacked, which is why normal immune reactions don't work. But what caused that cell's intelligence to hijack was that inside the cell was glucose, which is the molecule of sugar, the influx of sugar is massively caused a change in the internal environment, and now that mitochondria has a mind of its own. So it's really important that you understand the simplicity of that. Okay? Now, the second thing that we know about sugar, hopefully you know about this, but this article pointed out, is that sugar increases inflammation, and inflammation will impair your metabolism. So on other videos, I've talked about things like trans fats and sugar, and how it can create a more plaquing on the inside of your arterial walls within your circulatory system. And remember, it's like the arteries are bringing the blood flow to the heart, and then the veins are taking them away. So this is a transport system. Well, what we know about sugar in that scenario is that it creates more plaquing and it creates more inflammation. So the blood flow to the heart is not as great, and the blood flow away from the heart is not as great. But in the cancer situation, we're creating inflammation of a cell. And that cell, what that means is that whatever toxins are inside that cell, if the cell is inflamed, the toxins cannot get out. So adding this daily consumption of sugar into your life, you're making it so your cells can't breathe. And you're making it so all those toxins stay stuck inside the cell. And you're increasing your chances of genes getting expressed and the mitochondria being hijacked. It's that powerful of a, should we call it a food group? What do we even call it? Sugar has that much power over your cellular health. Now, what this study, going back to the 2022 Journal of Cancers, they said a high sucrose or high fructose diet activates several mechanistic pathways, including inflammation, glucose, and lipid metabolic pathway. So a new concept that I've been really teaching is that I believe in this modern world, so many systems are getting dysregulated. And one of the biggest systems that we have that is getting dysregulated is the metabolic system. So when I read something like that, I'm like, well, okay, the immune system's getting dysregulated from sugar, which is why you're having this chronic inflammatory reaction. Inflammation is an immune response. We've got glucose being affected, so this is why you become insulin resistant. And then we have the lipid pathway, which is your body's ability to break down fats. And if you can't break down fats, those fats are going to be stored as literal fat. And an increase in obesity also means an increase in cancer. So I'm just trying to show you how this all ties together. And if you understand the complexities of this, you'll start to see that taking something as simple as sugar out of your diet really helps your chances of minimizing a cancer diagnosis. And if you have cancer, really helps your chances of recovery. Okay. The third thing that I want to talk about that this study talks about is that the authors also noted that sugar not only destabilizes glucose and your lipid metabolic pathways, but it increases other diseases that are precursors for cancer. Diseases like metabolic syndrome. So it's not really a disease, it's kind of a condition. And what we know about metabolic syndrome is that it ends up creating a situation where you're more prone to obesity, insulin resistance, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and even liver enzymes. So I talked about this a lot during the pandemic. I continue to quote this, that here in America, only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. After the pandemic, it was as low as 8%. So we are literally looking at one ingredient causing many diseases, and ultimately could be your demise if we're not careful about taking sugar out of your diet. Which leads me to the last thing I want to tell you, which is how do you take sugar out of your diet? Well, the first thing I'll tell you is I have found in teaching the world how to metabolically switch and teaching the world how to fast, that when we start to fast, not only do we clean up our metabolic system and we get our metabolic markers better and we make our cells more insulin sensitive, we bring that inflammation down, we change the environment in the cell, but we also change our cravings. Because when we go into these fasted states, we starve out some of the fungus and some of the bacteria that are causing us to crave sugar. So if you don't know about a fasting lifestyle, you can check out my book, Fast Like a Girl, and I show you all the different levels of fasting, and the longer you fast, the more you put fasting into your routine, the more you're gonna see that your sugar cravings go away. I've seen it over and over and over again. Okay, the other thing that I wanna point out is that there are sugar substitutes that are really good and won't have this effect of increasing cancer. My favorite is coconut sugar. So coconut sugar tastes a lot like brown sugar. It's less refined, and it's lower on the glycemic index, so it doesn't spike your blood sugar as high. In my household, this is what we cook with. We all cook with coconut sugar, and I really like the taste of it. Other sugars that my community, my Reset Academy, which is our membership group, has a lot of people in that group have talked about monk fruit as one of their favorites, that it doesn't have this sort of fake taste, whereas others like erythritol and stevia. I'm not a stevia fan, but it can be a healthy sugar alternative. But the important thing to understand is that if you're sugar addicted, just learning how to metabolically switch, learning how to lean into something as simple as 12 hours of fasting, 13 hours of fasting every day, and then switching back to food. Over time, the more you do that, your cravings for sugar will go away. In fact, those of you that have done that and it's worked really well, put it in the notes so others can feel hope and inspiration. The other thing you can do is you can start to change your sugar out for things like coconut sugar. And then if you want to go stevia or monk fruit, you can go that route. But the important thing is I want you to understand that just because sugar is everywhere, just because it is in the supermarket, doesn't mean that it's healthy. And this is the sad state of affairs that we are in right now in this modern world, is that we are putting foods in our supermarket that are building chronic diseases like cancer. So it is up to us to start to change our palate. It is up to us to make better food choices and to vote with our dollars and let those food industries know we don't want the highly processed sugars. We don't want the trans fats. And the only way we can send that message is by not buying them. But when I hear stories of people who have been diagnosed with cancer unknowingly and their diet was horrible and they walked into their grocery store assuming that everything in there was safe, this is a crime. And you need to know the power of sugar on building disease in your body. And it's not that hard to get rid of when you learn how to build a fasting lifestyle. I really want to talk about the preparation of some of these foods because they really, really matter. The first one that I want to start with are vegetables. So we know that vegetables are amazing for everything. They have nutrients in them. Those of you that have pre-ordered Eat Like a Girl, I have something called the Key 24. They are the 24 nutrients you need to be getting every day in your body so that you can make hormones. And when you eat vegetables, if you cook them the wrong way, you actually make that vegetable void of these nutrients. And let me tell you some of the nutrients that vegetables have in them that are amazing. So you have vitamin A, C, D, E, K. You've got your B vitamins, magnesium. For my menopausal women, magnesium is really important. Potassium for the muscle function and calcium for bones. So we love, love, love vegetables, but here's the thing. The most common way that people eat vegetables is by boiling them. So the first mistake that we make with vegetables is we boil them or steam them. Steaming means we can actually put them in and we want to make them soft like broccoli. I'm going to tell you something about broccoli here in a moment that will shock you. But when you are boiling or steaming, you are taking those key nutrients out of that food. So this is a really interesting study that I found. It's a 2009 study, so it's a little bit old, but it found that boiling broccoli reduced its nutrient content by 50%. That's a lot. There was another study, a 2023 study, found that boiling vegetables, including spinach, squash, pumpkin, peas, and peppers, reduced their vitamin and mineral content by 71%. So my first advice to you is let's stop boiling our vegetables, which is probably we have to then have a conversation about, well, I don't want to eat them raw all the time. Okay, raw would be best, obviously. Steaming, boiling to me is you're actually putting them in water and you're boiling them in the water. That, by the way, that liquid is actually nutrient dense. So one thing you could do is you could find a way to drink the liquid. I don't know if or put it in a vegetable soup or something so you get those nutrients back. But boiling would be where you're got them fully immersed in water. Steaming would be a little milder version of that, so you'd get less of a nutrient loss. But then raw, like I said, is going to be the way that you're going to keep most of it. I'll tell you, the one way we do it in my family is a little stir fry. So put a little grass-fed butter on a pan and just lightly stir fry them. You're not going to lose as much of the nutrients that way as well. And maybe keep them a little al dente, right? So maybe they're a little crunchy. It's when we get them really soggy and soft that it makes a difference. So just because your mother said eat your vegetables doesn't mean that you can boil the heck out of them and that still you're going to get this nutrient load that we are all trying to get with our vegetables. So let's be careful how we use them. This is interesting for those of you who are like, I'm not sure I'm going to drink the broth of my boiled vegetables. Let me just throw something out for you. A 2007 report found that vegetable broth retains 100% of its minerals and between 70 to 90% of its vitamins. So maybe you boil your vegetables, take the broth, and again, you put it in a vegetable soup with some chicken broth and other things that make it taste better. Okay, number 2. Are we good on vegetables? We got it? We got it? Like, let's take good care of them. Okay, number 2. You ready for this? I love coffee. I think you love coffee, some of you, but how we make the coffee matters. This is fascinating. So number 2, the most common mistake we make are these, well, there's twofold, these paper filters, the paper filtered coffee. I'm even going to put in there the little aluminum plastic containers that we use, and I see them at hotels all the time that you put in and you just click it down. And I won't say the name of the product, because there's lots of products out there and it makes you a cup. But if it's in a plastic aluminum container or it's in a paper filter, one of the basic challenges is not only you're putting hot water through all those chemicals, but actually filtering it this way takes out 2 really beneficial compounds that are in coffees. So remember, coffee is really high in polyphenols. And 2 of these polyphenol compounds do some amazing things to your body. They block pro-inflammatory signaling cells. So if you have a systemic situation, inflammatory situation going on in your body, these incredible compounds, what they'll do is they'll go and turn off the signaling for inflammation and lower inflammation. We also know that they increase glutathione production, and glutathione is what helps you detoxify. And we know they're neuroprotective against neurons in your brain, which is why we often say coffee is a health food. But when you put it through filtered water, you've now taken these 2 key compounds out. And when you're using them in those plastic containers, same thing, these 2 key compounds come out. It is no longer a health food. And if your water filter is bleached in chlorine, you're now getting the chlorine into your cup of coffee. If it's in a plastic little pod, you're now getting the plastic. So not only did you take these helpful anti-inflammatory glutathione-producing chemicals out of your cup of coffee, but you've now put other chemicals in. So how you make your coffee matters. French press, pour over, that's our preferred way of drinking coffee in my house. Third mistake that people are making, this is a little less common, but we do still cook this health food, and it's cooked berries. So it's just what I said, when we cook berries. So remember, anytime you heat up any kind of wonderful food, now we are going to pull minerals out. And like I said, with coffee, the way you heat it up matters because you might be getting extra chemicals or pulling out different nutrients. So this one was interesting because they found that a 2015 study found that cooking berries destroyed 94% of its antioxidants. So if you're like me and you like a good apple, or a berry crisp, you're putting it in your oven and now you've lost that antioxidant load. So maybe again, like I said with the vegetables, don't cook it as much. When we look at something like even jams and stuff where those berries have really been heated up, you pretty much can guess you're not getting very many antioxidants in them. Obviously great for taste. I love to make a good pie. I love to make a good crisp, especially a berry one. But you don't fool yourself into thinking that you're getting a good dose of antioxidants in there. You're just stimulating your taste buds. So overall, what I wanted you to know on this video is how you cook these healthy foods matter. And there's so many times we walk around thinking we're doing something that's really great, it's really healthy for us, but actually we've taken a health food and we've turned it into a toxic food. And so the more I bring videos like this for you, I hope the more you're aware that keeping a food in its natural state is the best way to make sure that you maximize those nutrients. And food matters. So I've been here on YouTube teaching you a fasting lifestyle, and you got to remember that a fasting lifestyle is you create a fasting window every day where you're not eating. This is where the coffee fits in because you can have coffee there, just don't do it through the techniques that I talked about. And then you create an eating window where you're eating nutritious food that fills you up. So if this is a new concept for you, I have a book for you out there. It's called Fast Like a Girl for the women in the audience. A lot of men have bought that book too and found it helpful. And now we got Eat Like a Girl. So Eat Like a Girl is coming out October of 2024, depending on when you're watching this. It is available for pre-order. And I got a ton of food lists, which foods you should be eating for your hormones and to lose weight and get that belly fat to go away. And I got over 100 recipes done by professional chefs. It's off the charts. I'm very proud of this book. So if your mind is expanded by this, in this particular video, you hadn't really thought about how you cook your food, you're going to want to get Eat Like a Girl. I put a lot of things in there that I know will make people go, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. I don't like to put content out there just to entertain myself or entertain you. I put this content out there. I write this book to change your life because you are powerful. You live in a body that knows how to heal itself. So if you're not walking around loving the body you're living in, then we got to sit down and have a talk and look at the quality of food, how you're cooking your food, when you're eating your food. All of that matters to every single cell in your body. But don't give up on yourself. Food matters. I want to talk to you about 3 of the worst foods you can have for breakfast. And there's a lot of really bad foods you can have for breakfast. So I'm going to kind of lump them according to category. And I also want to talk about, should you eat breakfast? Since this channel, we talk a ton about intermittent fasting, all types of fasting. I want to talk about when you would eat breakfast and when should you avoid breakfast. So there's a lot to discuss in this topic. First, I want to talk, I literally just had a conversation with Dr. Sachin Panda, who is one of the leading intermittent fasting experts. He also is a circadian rhythm expert. I just had an amazing conversation with him yesterday on the Resetter podcast about the timing of food. And so you can listen to that depending on when you're listening to that. To this video, you can go to the Resetter podcast and go look up the timing or see that interview. And what was really interesting is that we talked a lot about what is more important, the quality of food or the timing of food. And there's a lot of discussion right now, specifically around intermittent fasting, because it's been around for so long that a lot of people are saying, no, we shouldn't be skipping breakfast. We should be eating breakfast. There's a lot of people that are like, we should be eating breakfast first thing and when you get up in the morning. And so I wanted to go to the circadian rhythm expert and ask him specifically about the timing of foods. So when we're talking about breakfast, what I want you to know is that the first hour you wake up in the morning, your cortisol within like the first 45 minutes is the highest that it will be all day, by the way. It's like you get up, and depending on how you get up and you hit that like spike of cortisol and you're off and meant to be going for the day, because cortisol is the hormone that makes us move. Now, the worst thing you could ever do for your health is have cortisol high and insulin high at the same time. So because when cortisol is high, you are more insulin resistant. So when the first 45 minutes of our day, if we're eating any of these 3 categories of food I'm about to talk to you about, and at the moment the cortisol is high, that is a double whammy. That is like a hormonal metabolic hot mess. Now you add into that the idea around melatonin. So melatonin kicks in when the sun goes down at night. It's what makes you sleepy, but then it has to turn off when you wake up in the morning. And what signals it to turn off is sunlight. And according to Sachin Panda, he said that in the morning we've got this, cortisol goes up, melatonin is slowly turning off. And just like melatonin makes us sleepy, melatonin makes your pancreas sleepy. So what ends up happening is as long as you have melatonin in the system, you are less insulin sensitive. So even though this video is about breakfast, even though some of you are opening up your eating window at like an hour after you wake up, which is perfect, I really want to encourage you to not roll out of bed and eat these 3 foods within the first hour of waking up. In fact, I highly encourage you to wait the first hour and not eat anything based off those principles that I just taught you. So with that in mind, what are the 3 categories? Well, the first one is cereal, but specifically granola. And I wanted to explain something about granola, because granola I think back to this, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we were like, oh, granola is like healthy, right? We even use the word granola for people that are like hippies. Oh, they're so granola, like they're all natural. Well, guess what? Granola is not natural anymore. It doesn't have that same benefit that it used to have. So one of the things about granola, and doing some research, is that most granolas, 100-gram serving of granola contains 63 grams of carbs, 18 grams of sugar, and 11 grams of protein. So the protein is good, but it's high in sugar. A lot of them have dried fruit in it. This one didn't. And it's packed with refined carbohydrates, so it spikes the blood sugar, and it has no fiber. So, granola is not the health food we once thought it was. In fact, I'm just going to say in this category, the worst thing you could have in the morning is a commercial grade granola or cereal, because the metabolic expense is so high at a time when your body's not metabolically prepared for it. So I would recommend, if you found a healthy granola, maybe you eat it an hour or 2 after you wake up, but definitely not in the first hour. Deal? Make sense? Okay. Number 2 is green juice. Now, I have thrown down orange juice so much, so I'm going to put juice in it. I just hope, or like go watch the video I did on orange juice. Orange juice is just a glucose bomb. There's no metabolic upside to orange juice. It does not help you fight a cold. And unfortunately, green juices are quickly becoming the same problem. And here's why. If you have had green juice, just green juice, like typical they would be like chard or celery or cucumber. I love green juice, but most people don't like green juice without fruit. So most green juices are having pineapple and apple poured into it. In fact, some of the commercial green juices, I always look at the label and I look at what the first vegetable or fruit is inside that juice. And with a lot of green juices, the very first thing on the ingredient label is an apple. Okay, that means it's mostly apple juice with a little bit of some green juice in it. So don't be fooled. Just because it's green doesn't mean it's healthy. Every single time I get a green juice, I get it without the pineapple, without the apple. Yes, it's not as tasty, but I don't want the glucose expense. So green juice, not a great one. This goes for any juice in the morning, especially, oh my gosh, that first hour you wake up, down some orange juice at a time when your melatonin is high and your cortisol is high. You are in for a massive metabolic challenge. So please, let's leave the juice for maybe later in the day, and let's try to get the fruits out of them. And the other part we have to remember with juice is that even though they may have some of the fruits that I've taught you here that are really healthy, they take all the fiber out of them. So there's no fiber in this, and so it's just a glucose bomb. Okay, third one, this was, if you were a parent with me, in the elementary school that my kids went to, I was every day like complaining about this food. I thought it was just toxic and it created so much a mess all over my children, and that is flavored yogurt. The one specifically that when my kids are now in their 20s, that my kids used to eat were those Go-Gurts, where they would roll them all up and their mouth would be all blue. I didn't give them to them, but they would get them from a friend, and it was just a sugar bomb. So again, I feel like yogurt falls in the category of granola. We even call somebody a granola when we say that they're a healthy natural. There's not a lot natural about granola anymore. There's not a lot natural about flavored yogurts. In fact, most of them are sugar bombs. And anything that has this one doesn't. But any foods that have a really bright color to it, like the Go-Gurts, that's chemicals that gave that bright color. So let's try to avoid those. So flavored yogurt, if you think about what so many people do, it breaks my heart. They get up in the morning, they have orange juice, they have cereal, and they have yogurt. And there couldn't be a worse breakfast on the planet. So this is why we're in the metabolic mess that we're in as a society. So let's get this stuff out. So I think that leaves us with, okay, well, what is a good breakfast? And I'll tell you some of my favorite. Everybody's a little different. I polled some of my team, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't just give you my biased opinion, but that I understood a little more of what everybody likes. So for starters, eggs are phenomenal. Eggs have leucine in them, which is the amino acid hero of the day. So they stabilize your blood sugar. There's so many reasons to love eggs. Smoked salmon, a lot of people do lox in the morning, great with all the omegas. Anything with the avocado, there's a video prior to this where I talk about fruits, and avocado is a fruit and it helps you burn fat. High in monosaturated fats, great for controlling blood sugar, great addition to eggs, love it. Bacon and steak, if you like steak and eggs, I'm a huge sausage fan. Always make sure if you're eating meat that you get the meat without the pesticides and the antibiotics and everything that's poured into that. And the last thing is, if you are a yogurt fan, and I actually do this a lot over the years with the clients that I coached, a lot of times I would have them do Greek yogurt with berries in the morning. So if you're going to go down the yogurt, go down the Greek yogurt path. It has more protein, it has more fat, it'll stabilize your blood sugar. And then, like I said, let's try to keep it an hour away from the moment you wake up. I would say even 2 hours. A general rule I like to follow for myself so I can mind melatonin and not put a lot of stress on my pancreas is I eat in the light. Whenever it's light out, melatonin's down. So it's a really interesting approach to looking at when to eat. I think it's really important that we don't eat in the dark. That doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes you are out with friends, or in the winter it's much harder to follow that rule, but a general guiding principle that I think you'll find will keep you metabolically healthy. So there you go. Those are the worst things you're gonna have for breakfast. Pretty much right there. And again, if you have a great breakfast hack, put it in the comments. If you know somebody who's eating this stuff or drinking this stuff for breakfast, send them this video, because the way we start to clean up the metabolic challenge of this world is when people understand that just because it says all natural on the cereal box, or just because you think granola is for health nuts, that you can easily go astray, and then you're ending up in this metabolic challenge that so many people worldwide are struggling with. So there you go. As always, I hope that helps. If you love this video, I did a great video called Should You Eat Eggs Every Day for Breakfast? So you need them to make things like serotonin and dopamine, the neurotransmitters that give us a good mood balance, make us happy, make us calm, give us joy and satisfaction. The precursors for those neurotransmitters are all inside this little egg.